The new iteration of The Crow has landed in theaters, and everyone has been wondering, is this new remake better than the 1994 original? I'm going to answer that question today by going over each film and scoring them in 4 separate categories. Then at the end of the video, I'll compare the final scores of each film. The categories I'll be scoring The Crow films in are story, which includes the plot elements and pacing of each movie, characters, which focuses on character writing and performances, filmmaking, which includes directing, cinematography, special effects, etc., and most importantly, effectiveness, how well each film succeeds and what it intended to do. Let's see how these films compare and take a closer look at 1994's The Crow.
The Crow.
Before making this video, I have never seen The Crow before. I always meant to check it out, but I guess I never quite found the time. But now that I have seen it, I'm honestly kind of blown away. First of all, the visuals in this movie are insane. I haven't seen any Alex Proyas movies before besides Gods of Egypt.
Let Ra himself hear you.
He really captures the dark and gritty underworld of this city. Every frame of this film is dingy and captures the brutality of the world these characters live in. And there are a bunch of creative, memorable shots, like every time we take to the sky with the Crow, or the reveal of Eric Draven's full transformation, or even the shot of Eric in the pawn shop door. And the cinematography by Dariusz Wolski is so unique. The gothic style with the creative use of color and lighting really emphasizes the dark nature of the story. Also, it has, like, just a real cool vibe to it, and the visual flair of the film extends to the action scenes. I wouldn't say these scenes are the best of all time or anything like that, but they're appropriately brutal and well framed and fairly memorable. Eric's 1v1 against Tintin is a solid introduction to what his new powers are, and even though we don't see Tintin die on screen, seeing his body being carried away later with all his knives in him is pretty comical. I mean, look at him, he looks like a giant voodoo doll. The shootout sequence with the gang is also very exciting. It's super chaotic with Eric moving under the table and doing front flips and taking out goons, and at the end when everyone's dead, there's a super cool effect with the lighting where it almost looks like his eyes are glowing. But the real crowning jewel of action scenes in this movie is the final sequence. Eric's final fight with Top Dollar on top of the church is freaking awesome. Visually, it's gorgeous with all the rain. It has some really high stakes with Sarah in danger and Eric losing his powers. And thematically, it works really well with Eric turning the pain caused by Top Dollar back on himself. But these action scenes do feel limited at times, because while there are some awesome, totally seamless action shots, like the whole car chase with T-Bird, there are a few special effects moments that have not aged well, like this shot where the cuts on Eric's hands just fade away, or this shot of Eric falling from his apartment, or this scene where Brandon Lee is very obviously holding a fake arm. It just kind of reminds me of Toy Story where Woody is holding Buzz's arm and the rest of the toys are just like,
Yo, holy sh**, he dead!
But the main reason this film is so well remembered is because of its main character, Eric Draven. He is such a compelling and empathetic protagonist. His story in The Crow is really simple. He was brought back to life to get revenge on the criminals who killed him and his fiancée. But the movie is able to give him so much depth through his actions and through the showcases of his pain. He has flashes of his memories with Shelly, little moments, big moments, everything. This is a really good depiction of how when you lose someone, all you have left of them are the memories, and those memories can hurt. Eric is also really compelling with how he uses these terrible things that happen to him as a way to help others. He gives Ernie Hudson, policeman, advice about appreciating the little things in life. He helps Sarah get her mom off drugs. And most importantly, he helps this horrible city by ridding it of this criminal gang. And it must be said, Brandon Lee is so fantastic in this role. He captures Eric's despair and destruction so well, but he's also great at playing up the more insane, humorous moments. He also brought the physicality when needed, and he was just so perfect as this character. I think it's pretty well known by now that Brandon Lee passed away during a tragic accident while filming this movie, so I won't go into it too much, but it truly is a tragic loss. None of the other characters are on the same level as Eric Draven. I really like Ernie Hudson, but his character was kinda two-dimensional, and I could say the same for Sarah. She was kind of a boring kid character. The villains are also very lackluster. The 4 criminals who killed Eric and Shelly are laughably dumb and evil. In one of the early scenes we get of them, they're swallowing bullets for some reason. Like, you know you're gonna have to pass those at some point, right? That's probably not gonna be a very fun experience, but at least these chuckleheads die in satisfying ways. And I don't think he's awful, but Top Dollar is a sort of bland antagonist. His whole thing is, I just want anarchy and chaos, blah blah blah. I'm the Joker, baby! But at least Michael Wincott gives a really solid performance. This movie can also be really funny at times. It's refreshing to watch a superhero movie have actual attempts at comedy and not just the MCU, well, that just happened kind of humor. The scene of Eric interrogating the pawn shop owner is so unserious. He's throwing the guy around the store, hanging on the ceiling like a bat, and dousing him with gas. These moments of levity help to balance out the dark tone of the film. And another thing that balances out that dark tone is the film's message. It never rains all the time. Despite all the terrible things that happen in the movie, Eric is still able to show others that there is still joy in bad times. There is still light at the end of the tunnel. Before watching The Crow for the first time, I thought it was this dark, angsty, dreadful movie, but I'll remember it as a hopeful story with a fantastic lead character, great action scenes, some well-placed comedy, and absolutely gorgeous imagery. Now, let's see how The Crow scores. For story, I'm gonna give The Crow a 7 out of 10. It's a very simple revenge tale, but it has sprinkles of deeper, more optimistic themes. For characters, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Eric Draven is an incredibly well-written main character, but the rest of the cast is kind of flat. For filmmaking, I'm gonna give this film an 8 out of 10. Outside of some mid special effects and some shots that haven't aged all that well, The Crow is a visually pleasing, beautiful film. And finally, for effectiveness, I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. The Crow sought out to deliver a superhero experience unlike any other, with unique visuals, story, and action. And I think for the most part, it delivers that unique experience. And with these scores added up, The Crow 1994 earns a final score of 7.5 out of 10. Now let's see how the 2024 remake compares.
Are you sweet talking me?
I have to make a slight correction to something I said earlier. This new Crow movie isn't a remake, it's a re-adaptation, because that's something that people are arguing about online. But with that said, The Crow 2024 straight up sucks. Look, I tried. I went into this movie with an open mind. I'm not even someone who has nostalgia blindness for the original film. I watched it a week ago for the first time, but this new movie just fails in every way. And there may be spoilers ahead, just a fair warning. For starters, there are some baffling story decisions. Eric doesn't fully transform into the Crow until the last 30 minutes of the movie. He is resurrected and gets some of his powers before that, but he doesn't fully become the hero until late in the film, or really do much of importance up until that point. The film also really focuses on Shelly, which certainly was a choice. For maybe the first 35 to 40 minutes of the movie before she dies, she's really the main character, and the narrative is completely changed to revolve around Shelly. Instead of Eric being resurrected to avenge himself and her, he's instead resurrected to kill the main villain of the movie, and in return, the Crow God or whoever this is will bring Shelly back to life. And while this story change might work for some people, it didn't work for me at all, because they tried so hard to make Shelly more of a character. Eric in turn didn't receive nearly as much characterization, and so both of them just became nothing burgers that I didn't care about at all. Also, their romance was somehow far worse here than in the original movie. We only got snippets of Eric and Shelly together, but they were enough to make you believe that these two actually loved each other. But in this new Crow movie, we get like half an hour of them on screen together, and there is nothing there. There is no chemistry between these two characters, and it felt really awkward at times. Also, this is maybe a career worst performance for both actors. I liked Bill Skarsgård in a lot of things. He's great as Pennywise, and he's really funny in Deadpool 2 and John Wick 4. But for most of his performance in The Crow, he just seems bored, and it's not until the end of the movie that he actually brings some emotion and life into the character. And he also has some bad line delivery here and there, but I can't really blame him. The film's dialogue would sound bad from any actor, and FKA Twigs feels really flat as Shelly, and she also had some really terrible line delivery. The main villain of the film is a generic evil man played by Vinny Huston, who you might know as the generic evil man in Wonder Woman. Man, this guy's gonna find some new work. And as a villain, he's as boring as can be. I criticize Top Dollar for being kinda boring, but at least he had the hair, the sword, the voice. He had flair. Vincent Rowing, if that's how you say it, has none of that. He's just a generic evil guy who made a deal with the devil and kills people for immortality or whatever. The one thing I and many other people seem to agree on is that the action scenes can be really enjoyable at times. The final set piece at the Opera House has some really bloody, gory, cool moments. It's just a real shame that it took an hour and 10 minutes to get to them. And every other action scene in this film is just fine. There's nothing too exciting or interesting about them. They're just run-of-the-mill action scenes. The visuals of the movie are pretty solid. There was some cool lighting at times and some shots that looked neat, but again, it doesn't really compare to the visual language of the first film at all. At least the CGI is good, especially during the moments where Eric is healing himself. That is probably the one thing this film has on the original. But my absolute least favorite part of this movie is its attempts at depth. I don't think I've ever rolled my eyes this much during a movie. These characters would say the most pretentious and cringe things throughout the entire runtime. And here's a couple direct quotes that I wrote down. If it's hard to love me harder. Do you think angsty teens would build shrines to us? Do you think angsty teens would build shrines to us? I tried so hard not to laugh in the theater when I heard that. These freaks want to be remembered in the same breath as Slender Man. The Crow was the most trying movie for me to watch this year, and it's my least favorite film of the year so far. Seriously, I actually considered walking out of the film early. I have never done that before. So I guess let's see how it scores. For story, I'm gonna give The Crow a 2 out of 10. Once it gets going, it's not an awful watch, but the first hour and 10 minutes of the film are really hard to sit through. For characters, I'm gonna give The Crow a 1 out of 10. It has characters. For filmmaking, I'm gonna give The Crow a 5 out of 10. It could be well directed at times, the CGI was solid, and there are some cool action scenes, but overall, it's not very impressive. And lastly, for effectiveness, I'm going to give The Crow a 0 out of 10. This film wanted to present a new amazing adaptation of the Crow comic book, but there was nothing amazing about it, so I'm going to give The Crow 2024 a final score of 2 out of 10. So that means out of these two films, the original Crow is by far the better film, which I'm sure a lot of you have already guessed, but here it is anyway. As always, be sure to let me know which film you enjoyed more down in the comments. And if you want to watch another video, you can click here to watch my review of another bad 2024 film, Unfrosted, starring Jerry Seinfeld. Or you can click here to watch a video that YouTube picked out just for you.